Streaming. All right. Wait. Looks like we're live now. All right, everybody. Welcome to today's edition of the Daily Market Commentary. I'm your host, Chuck Fulkerson. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. We're going to do what we do each and every day, looking for educational trades from both breakouts and reversal perspectives. We're going to find out what in the world is the market doing, because there is some strange divergence in the equities this morning. Some things that we're not used to seeing are coming to pass in that the Nasdaq's going down, but the Russell's going way up. Abnormal divergence in these equity markets, but a lot of selling pressure being shown in the Russell markets this morning. If you're new to the channel, do me a favor, click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get the alerts and the updates as they happen. And then if you are a regular viewer, do me a favor, hit the like button. The thumbs up button really means a lot. Just takes you half a second. I'll remind you again later, but throw that up in there. All right. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Let me shrink my face, and then we'll get into the session for today. Yeah. Well, we knew that they were eventually going to, Dennis. We knew that eventually the bonds and the markets were going to move. They just hadn't done so as of yet. Now, the ES level that we talked about yesterday as a potential breakdown didn't give us any basing near the level to give us a good breakdown trade. So there was no real clean setup. And I know we talked a little bit about the breakout to the upside, and there was no clean upside breakout either. We did wind up coming into this little area of supply. Well, I say coming into it, coming really close to this little area of supply. Without really giving you much of an entry, and I had left that area on there as a just in case level. And what's funny is that I'm not normally in front of the market at that time, but I was actually working on on a slide deck for our strategic trader class, and I saw that level had come really close to getting hit, and I thought, I've missed it. I'm not going to get in it late, and it was probably a good call. I mean, it wound up working for a decent move. I'm sure some of you may have gotten in if you had your trade a little bit ahead of where ours was, but it didn't really fit most of my criterion rules. I'm not getting into anything really at 6-7 o'clock at night very often. It doesn't happen as on the regular for me. But as far as today goes, I'm not going to look at the ES until after I've looked at the Nasdaq and the Russell, because I'm going to start with the Russell. The Russell is up over 2.5% this morning. Huge moves higher. Now, not only do we have huge moves higher, but we've come above this line of control area where we talked about that once we get above here, you've got, a lot more upside potential and upside momentum. We came to this all-time high, tested this new high, and now we've got these strong upper wicks telling me that there could be a reversal. So if we believe that this Russell has bullish opportunities remaining in it, you have a really interesting little trade here at this wick over wick. Yeah, very much a shooting star candle. And so we may get a little pullback, and then this little wick over wick area here, 2015 by 2012.2, is a potential reversal. Now, I'm going to shrink that down a bit and go to the 15-minute. It shows up the same way on a 15-minute as its little wick over wick. So, I mean, it's a very, I'll call it a buried level, right? It's a buried level. There's not a whole lot in there when it comes to the wriggle room for mistakes, right? Now, it is right at this prior area of resistance, which was formed a few hours prior. So the question is, will there be enough buy orders in here in order to cause us to come back up? On a small time frame, I think that may be a worthwhile trade, because your big picture trend is indeed up since you broke above some of these highs. Now, technically, I'd want a higher low as well, but the Russell was the most on the downside, and now it's really leading us to the up. And while that would be a normally bullish for the whole overall markets, the Nasdaq is telling us just the opposite. So the NASDAQ is saying exactly the opposite. The NASDAQ drops 1.4%. And that 1.4% that the market fell off in the NASDAQ, it dropped below this line here we talked about, could be a breakout. Now, by the way, we never got the basing for a breakout here yesterday. It just poked below. Um, and so the NASDAQ is telling me, hey, you've got a better chance at a short. And really, this is the really, really clean one in here, but it's not the right time of day, right? I mean, that's at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. It's exactly the wrong time of day that we look for a good entry, a good opportunity. If I go to the 15-minute chart, and we look for another area, you've got this little wick over wick area here, and then you've got this rally base and then a decent drop. So I do, but none of those are high probability entry levels, right? They're not high probability entry levels. So I wouldn't be surprised, based upon this little double bottoming that we had in the beginning of the European session, I wouldn't be surprised to see us actually make it up to this region, knowing that this is not a great trade up there. True. I mean, and by being around yesterday's pit close up here, it does help for sure. I was looking at the drop base drop, and so I'm going to leave the level up here as actually the better level, just based upon pure price structure, right? We're basing that just purely upon price structure. Um, as the better level. And then on the 15-minute, you can see that there's this little double bottom pattern here that is formed. Is there room to make money from here up to here? Sure, there is. If you see some basing, especially right around here, if we see some basing, you may get a breakout trade to make it up to that region if the NQ can continue to follow in the direction of the Russell. Now, the Russell looks like we're going to get back to this level of demand here real soon. If this blows through, and then if this blows through, then we know that the Russell's not going to be able to hold. But I think that just simply based upon this area here of resistance and support, if we can stay above this 2000 number, 2000 is kind of the whole round number here, that if the Russell stays above there, that to me is typically a low risk entry point, just based upon those prior areas of resistance and support there. This should be a line of control. Now, what does that tell me for the ES? Well, for the ES, it tells me nothing. What it tells me is that I probably shouldn't be looking at the ES, because none of my levels are clean enough for me to take a trade either way. I mean, I still have this as a confirmation entry. This is a really good time of day that it was created. It's still a confirmation entry. The area up here that created the new all-time high in the overnight session, before the cash session opened up, is the level. We weren't surprised at the pullback overall. Matter of fact, the pullback could continue. I wouldn't be shocked to see a bit of a pullback continue, but I think that I'm not going to really add anything other than this level here from yesterday. So questions on equity markets? What do you guys think? Questions on equity markets? Type it in the chat window if there's anything that you want to add when it comes to equities. And then I don't typically look at the Dow in the DMC, but we talked about, yesterday, the Dow is probably the one that's more bullish, but none of them gave us basing around the breakout, right? None of them gave us any basing around the breakout to really solidify a reason for an entry. All right, let me throw this into the trade feed. All right, next, let's move over to Georgia on my mind. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know. I'm a little torn as to what's going to happen, but I don't also really think that the market's doing all that much on it. Yeah, and that's the other side, Vince. There's no reason that says I have to trade, right? I mean, there's nothing that says, hey, I need to trade this thing today. I could always just stay out, stay fresh, right? Keep my account safe by not participating in hot messedness. Crude oil, once again, still in our range. We've not really looked at many directional trades in crude oil the last few days. We had one yesterday, and now, when I look at what we have for today, yeah, I can come back down to yesterday's big move higher off of that speed candle, and we know that speed candles do tend to get retraced. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this speed candle come back in here, getting a bit of retracement back to this 48.26 by 48.02 region, but that's got to be in pink because it's a 15-minute level. But why is a pullback back to here, even if we don't get into the trade, if it only pulls back halfway, which sometimes we see that with these speed candles, is that they'll only retrace halfway. If we only retrace halfway, why is that still okay? It's still okay because it is still time passing, right? Our biggest friend in these non-directional markets is time when you trade options around those positions. So in looking at that, that is something worth considering, is that if time passes, that's going to be pretty good. Other than that, as far as supply above me, there's nothing that I'm interested in. When it comes to supply above me, there's absolutely nothing that I have any interest in, or something I need to talk about. So speaking of time, the options are really the way that you would play this. And if you don't know anything about options, we've got a ton of options content on the site. And so we are also looking at starting options deconstructed sessions again. Corey and I have picked a date that we're going to begin options deconstructed. So for those of you that don't know what options deconstructed is, go to tradersarmy.com, learn a little bit more. It's just part of your Traders Army membership. We break down options in a very beginner level, slow pace, so that you can feel good and understand them. So breakdown below 49.49 if we get another touch, and basing on the 15. So sorry about that. So there's clean air there, Trent, no doubt. I think that you definitely could have clean air for price to move down from there. You've got a little bit of basing in here with this wick up, price moved away, wicked back down, moved away. You've got a touch right here, and so now I think you'd look for basing somewhere in here before price would drop. Now, if we do drop below that 49.46, clean air is a possibility, because we could make it down to here fairly quickly. And so yeah, that could be a pretty good and a pretty clean setup. Using the 15-minute is a good idea, because that'll determine where your pivot would be, and your stop is determined by the location of your pivot. So all right. Next is gold. So looking at gold, gold's actually had some really good moves this morning. And gold, we hit our confirmation level. We didn't come into it last night. We didn't quite make it to the confirmation entry. We did hit it here in the last few hours. So John and Nick and Jose, and I know some of the others that are watching from the international locations outside of the great United States, as we like to say. Hopefully you're able to catch that move down. It hit its supplies level and immediately came smoking down to demand, and then the demand trade price hit our demand level, and we've gotten a nice rally out of that zone of demand. So this is a pretty clean picture of price moving from yesterday's area of supply down into today's level of demand, and both directions holding. Now, both directions held, but we traded to the middle, beyond the middle point of this level, so this got to go. And we traded to the bottom of this level, so this got to go. Those levels are gone. And so now I need to look and see, what does my next setup give me? Well, I clearly have an upward trend, no doubt about that. Coming to a line of what could be resistance here at 1968, right? Resistance. Are we gonna be able to break above that 1968 area? I don't know that it's going to make for a great breakout trade. And my fear with the breakout trade above that 1968 area really is in this supply here. I'd have to go back and look and see what's the quality, um, what's the quality of those levels in there. Alpha Intelligence. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while, man. Good to see you, brother. All right. So let me zoom out of this. Let me go 90 days, 1 hour. That goes back far enough. Yeah, it does. Okay. So looking at this as a potential breakout above 1967, 1968, when we look at this, this was a really clean area of supply right there, where we had this really clean rally-based drop, which was then retested right here, and that was a really nice move off of that level. We then retested it again, got a strong move away, and now we're just about into it a third time. Now, a lot of times you would consider this another area of supply, right? Because it was such a strong move away, you might consider this another area of supply. Well, that's where our trade yesterday came from. So since we've traded into all of those levels 2 or 3 times, that's why I think that it's an okay for a breakout. Now, I then have to look for my supply level up above me. And in my supply level up above me, what am I looking for? Well, I have this big wick up here, and that's all a retest of this area over here. Now, interestingly enough, we were able to just get above this high with this wick over here to the left. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we wiped out any of the orders that were remaining from this high. And then we came to here and we retested that area with these two upper wicks. So that weakens the quality of that supply level significantly. Tells me that that supply level is significantly weaker and that I'm not as concerned with it being as a stopping point for a breakout above this region. I would actually look to here as my next stopping point, right? So, well, what is that? I got to go look at that now. So when I look at that, that is a legitimate area of supply that certainly I need to consider when I'm looking at potential stopping points, because it was the origin of a very strong move down in price that was a sustained move down in price, right? Now, is there still enough room to run from 1967 to 1990? Sure there is. I would still want to make sure that I've got basing directly in front of the level and that my stop goes below the first pivot. Okay? So I know that was a little bit deeper breakdown of a breakout trade, but hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Um, Also, there is a level down in here. If we continue to pull back a bit further, I don't know that I like that one quite as much. We liked this area here, and price hit there, and we moved away from there nicely. Um, and so, my next level I think that's really clean is the one down here at the end of the year. All right, Nat Gas. So Nat Gas did come into our confirmation long area in the overnight, and it's gone basically nowhere. So if you took this trade, move your stop to break even, because we are 6 candles in, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're actually in our 7th candle right now. We're 7 candles in, and price hasn't really done. So by being 7 candles in with price not doing all that much, move your stop to break even. You should be okay. Now, since we've moved our stop to break even and it's a 6 candle rule, now that's the way we might get an opportunity if price breaks below there for a run down to this 2.5 area for a little intraday opportunity. And then HG, our copper trade, we blew right through the confirmation short. No big surprise there. Came to the breakout level and did not get basing for the breakout trade. Got a retest area, but really no strong opportunity for an entry. You may have taken it on the retest, and if you did, great. If you didn't, you might get another bite at the apple right here with this little wick over wick area that's showing up, which is not a terrible time of the day that it's created. All right. All right, next, let's move to ags, and I'm just going to fly through the ags today. I do need to pop off a little bit early, so I'm just going to take a quick look at the ags. If there's really nothing for me to talk about, I'm not going to dive into them too deep. Soy, not a whole lot. Could be a breakout trade up above us in soy. Corn, we broke above. Oh no, we're into the is this the daily or the weekly area that I talked about? I think this is a big weekly area, so I'm not using that for small time trading. Um, I think this is actually a really nice clean area in corn. I just don't know that we're going to make it back to there today, so just keep that one on your charts. But that to me looks like a bunch of these other levels of demand that we never came back and retested, right? We still got to come back and retest some of those areas. Breakout trade above here, I think, is a potential. But other than that, I don't have a whole lot in these markets today, and I'm running a little short on time, so I don't want to dive too deep into these ones. This one didn't give us, I mean, we got a little bit of basing here, but it wasn't as clear. And so we're kind of pinching here at the end. That tells me that we could see price break one way or the other. Probability would state that it would break out to the upside. All right. Next, let's go to bonds and currencies. So bonds, we finally broke out of this long running trend that we've been sitting in as they sold off really, really hard last night. 4-hour chart shows us that we finally were able to break out of this funk that we were sitting in. It came down actually to our. Now this wasn't really designed as a breakout trade. This was really just kind of showing the range. But point is that we did come down to that line of support, and so let's see if we do bounce off that line of support. And if we do bounce off that line of support, will it take us? I would normally pick this wick over wick, but I'm not picking this wick over wick due to this wick right here. Well, what does that wick have to do with it? Well, that wick tells me that we went down, came up, dropped all the way down here, rallied back up. The next candle retested our wick over wick zone, right? And by that next candle retesting our wick over wick zone, then I'm not as interested in there. Okay? So, not as clear for me on that entry up there. So I would actually have to take this up a notch to the true origin of the drop. Well, that true origin of the drop is this big move down. Your better level is this one up here. Right up here is your better zone for an entry. Now, it looks a lot like the other one, except for the fact that it's a much better time of day, right? It looks a lot like the other one in that wick was kind of retesting that area, but it's a much better time of day. So that's pretty far away from current price. I don't know if we're going to make it back up to there today or not. I don't know if we're going to get that big of an advance, but it's just kind of the one that makes the most sense. On the 30-year bond, this is once again the more obvious one. Doesn't have as clean on the wick over wick area, so I'd probably go with the more obvious one on this one. Looking at the euro, so our euro, we did get a break above our breakout line here. Got a bit of basing here, pulled back, and now we've continued the rally higher. I will tell you that's that's once again that's 6 p.m. Not a great time to enter into many of those positions, and so didn't have great follow through. But I think on our smaller time period, this looks to be a pretty clean potential for an entry right in here. Decent time of the day. Not the best, but decent. For a possible entry on price returning back to this region down here. And then we have Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar, this is the one that we chopped around yesterday. Big sell-off. right? Or off of Monday's big sell-off that we kept that line on there. We chopped around, and now we've come right back up. And so are we going to retest this unbalanced wick over wick that we had in here? That would be the next area here. It's an unbalanced wick over wick, so it's not quite as clear or quite as clean. And our trend is still up, although this broke a swing low, but we were able to get a new swing high. Let's take that back to 1 hour so you guys can see the lines clearly. All right. All right, last one. Bonds and currencies, numero dos. Numero dos. Looking at the New Zealand dollar. So we talked a little bit about the New Zealand dollar yesterday. I gotta save this to go to immediately go to the 1 hour. This was. I gotta tell you, I don't know that I remember drawing this line up here yesterday. Oh, was that our target? That might have been our target. I don't remember drawing this line up here yesterday because I don't see where that was my supply zone. Yep. Yeah, I think that must have been a line that I just drew as a target because it did not. There's nothing there to lean on for supply. If anybody remembers, please let me know. It's when you're drawing, 150 lines a day. Sometimes you forget when you leave a random one somewhere. New Zealand dollar. Here's a little wick over wick unbalanced before the pivot. Obviously, your stop would go below the pivot, but we did have a good move in the overnight up through here. I think that the cleaner level is actually probably this one down here. I just don't know that we're going to make it there. So when I see that kind of a structure where I have unbalanced wick over wick at a Globex session, and then a more balanced wick over wick right at a market open, that to me is the better price magnet down here. So I'm going to make this upper level a confirmation entry and the lower level a limit entry. Great British Pound, we did come back down to this potential breakout line, touched it and moved away. Came really close to our 15-minute supply and didn't get in, which means it's got to switch to a confirmation trade. Then we came up to it again, got a little move away. Then we pierced it before then. So basically, by coming close to it and then piercing the level without really giving us an entry, it told us that the level was okay, but it was meh at best. I'm not going to look at anything in the pound today. I just don't think that there's a lot of great levels until I get above 1.37 or below 1.35, right? I need to get above 1.371 and below 1.355 for me to really have anything of any high quality in this setup. Japanese yen. Japanese yen did wind up breaking above this level here. We based, popped above it. Even if you took the entry 6 candles later, you went basically nowhere. And then it kind of just hung around that level. And now we've come really close to this little wick over wick for a retest pullback. Unfortunately, that retest pullback on that wick over wick did not give us an entry, and it's already started to move away, so you have to move it to confirmation. Well, that's not really wide enough to do a true confirmation level. But what I will say is that will it pull me back up to here? And if it pulls me back up to there, that makes for, I think, a fairly clean short on the Japanese yen. So I'm going to remove that lower level altogether and then just put this one up here as a potential entry. And then the Australian dollar. So looking at the Australian dollar, we have this area here that we talked about for a potential breakout. We then came into this big kind of weekly level, and we cut right through that big weekly level. Took a little bit, but we were able to cut right through that level. And so looking at our retest demand areas, where would be our best entry to get long on on this position? Well, on a 15-minute chart, I've got this area right down in here, similar to what we saw in the New Zealand dollar, that I have two levels that are pretty close to one another. And I think if we saw that on the hourly chart in the New Zealand dollar, but this one's not as clean of a wick over wick. Um, I kind of like this closer level here on the 15-minute, provided that we don't get too much basing too close to the area. I think that makes for a pretty good setup. All right. So those overall become our markets. I will say that I think you're getting a lot more opportunities in individual equities in the last couple of days than we're getting in futures. And I know a lot of people are, I want to make sure that I'm only trading futures. I'm only trading futures. Well, why? There are a lot of other markets out there that are worth trading when you understand all of the opportunities that are available to you. So if you've got any questions, shoot me an email, chuck.fulkerson@tradersarmy.com. I appreciate your time, everybody, today. We've got our Traders Army tonight is our open forum session, so make sure that when you come. By the way, I'm going to pull the calendar up just so everybody can see it. So open forum session is coming up tonight, 7 p.m. Central. When you're a Traders Army member, by the way, this is the schedule of live trade rooms for our upcoming sessions. Strategic Trader class is coming up on Friday, Saturday, Sunday of next week. If you want to learn more about that, go to the website and identify more about what it is we do. But we'd love to have you as a member. Come on board. Talk to you soon, everybody. Have a great day. Oh, I guess I'm showing the calendar and you can't see through it because you can only see my face. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. See ya.